Hello, everybody, and welcome to our fourth lesson of 6 for spirit groups in the lesson in Truth's book by Cady. And these two lessons are individuality and personality and spiritual understanding. And of course, next week, November 7th, we will resume these services being live in our sanctuary. As this coming Sunday, we welcome our guest minister, Reverend Linda Martella-Whitsett. So individuality and personality are aspects of who we are, but it's important that we distinguish the difference between the two. Sometimes they get mixed up with each other and used intermersingly, and it's not. They're two different distinctive things within us. Our personality is me. My personality is I'm a vivacious person. I enjoy being with people. I like fishing and sports. These are things that can change in a heartbeat. Today, I like fishing. Tomorrow, I may not. I like warm weather. I don't like cold weather. These are outer things about me that change depending on the mood I'm in, depending on the 5 senses that are so integral as part of our beingness. So that's the personality. But the individuality is that part of us that never changes, the truth of who we are. And much like Cady says, that the individuality part of us must increase while the personality side of us must decrease. The more we exude who we are, the unchanging truth of us, that Christ-like within us, that is never extinguished, that part of us where we fully understand that we are never separated from God, that part of us that gets it, that I have and you have total access to the unlimited possibilities of God. And it's up to us to distinguish the two, because our personality will always get us in trouble. It fulfills the desires of the outer expression of who we are. The wanting to have peaceful relationships, the wanting to have the right kinds of foods and the appetite for organics or what, but those are outside of ourselves. But the individuality is alive within us. And so for many of us, we do a lot of spiritual work on the outside. Give you an example, Unity 101 teaches we can create parking spots with our attitude and what we give our focus to. That's the outer expression of who we are. The metaphysics, the understanding of who we really are with our language and our words and our thoughts, is our ability to accept and to further understand who we are in the essence of God. I'm pretty sure you can distinguish the difference between John the Baptist and Jesus. So John the Baptist is known for prepare ye the way. He laid the foundation for this entity that we call Jesus, the man. He prepared people for it. Look, something big is coming. I want you to keep your eyes open for it. And he's the one that recognized that I need to decrease so that the Christ in us can increase. So the more we take time to have conversations with God, the more we listen to God, the more our individuality starts to come forth. And for some of us in an older generation, we've come to learn over the years that, pick your battles, stay within your truth. We no longer want that outer expression that causes us to have upsetness. We want peace and tranquility in our lives. We want more of that rather than more of the getting. And so that's our individuality coming forth and being part of this expression, while our personality starts to diminish. We start to live more on purpose rather than the outer doingness of staying so busy with the doing, and the being is minimized. As we mature in our spiritual understanding and our spiritual growth, that individuality takes hold and the personality diminishes. On paragraph in our chapter on personality and individuality, paragraph 20 reads like this. The more you learn to act from the voice within your own soul, the stronger and more pronounced will be your individuality within you. The more we listen to that still small voice of God, the more that individuality will naturally come out of who you are. And your need to please, your need to be with others diminishes because they're the outer expression. We find ourselves seeking more and more time in retrospection of our relationship with God, which never change. It is always available. In the original work of Emily Cady, it is in this chapter that some editing was done. And it is in this chapter where the term chemicalization comes up. So let me tell you what chemicalization is. It is new beliefs which have been affirming and meditating and have begun to drop into the subconscious mind, and we are meeting resistance from the old, solidified, entrenched, false, and limiting beliefs, and agitation results. However, after a short period, the strong spiritual oriented beliefs neutralize the limited beliefs, and something better results from our action. Chemicalization can appear in many different forms. For me, it was a runny nose. It was a little bit of being tired and wanting to know, oh, what's going on? And some people, the dis-ease, the uncomfortableness within them is so strong that they think that unity is not for them because they're sicker now than they were when they first came in the door. So they conclude that this is not working for me, and they stay away from the truth of who they are because it's painful. Chemicalization is letting go of a false belief, and so firmly both the cells within our very being have held on to these false beliefs, maybe for generations. Maybe your parents had the same false beliefs, and now you're being told, no, those are false. This is who you really are. And your body starts to react. Your chemicalization, the very being, starts to dissipate. And those cells that no longer carry the false beliefs must be eliminated from the body, either through a runny nose, maybe the need to release ourselves more with certain foods. Whatever it is, that chemicalization is a good thing. It's a good thing. And the sooner you realize you're going through a new belief system, it's easier for the old belief systems to dissipate and remove themselves from our bodies, because our bodies have been creating cells with false beliefs for a very, very long time. And so when we grab hold of something that is so profound and so, wow, I get it. God is good all the time. And we have to eliminate these ideas that there is evil in the world and that danger lurks around the corner. These are beliefs that need to stop. And one of the biggest beliefs that causes chemicalization within unitics when they first come in is hearing that you do not inherit sickness, which Myrtle Fillmore espoused to fully. When you really get it, that you do not inherit what your siblings, what your parents, your grandparents, you only give or get what you believe you should give or get. Chemicalization says, wait, if I don't inherit disease, then I am not going to be held steadfast in a false belief, and the body starts to change. Our whole continence changes. Everything about us is now different. And it's up to us to recognize that chemicalization is a good thing. So as you continue to go through this process within this wonderful text of Lessons in Truth, recognize that if you start to feel a little uncomfortable, this might be due to chemicalization in your body. Now, unfortunately, through some write-ups and rewrites and editing of this book, a lot of that has been taken out. So I wanted to let you know about this process in case it's happening for you. It certainly happened for me and for many of my friends when they first came into Unity. There was a dis-ease and a letting go of false beliefs that our body needed to eliminate. Now we go to spiritual understanding. You see, now the thing about spiritual understanding, it's kind of it's a mixed bag, because you give somebody a book and you tell them, you're going to love this book. You give them the Four Agreements, for example, or Emily Cady. You give them the book and say, you're going to love this book. And they read the book and they go, I don't get it. No, yeah, I don't take things personally. I see they're not ready for it. And that's okay. That doesn't minimize the gift that you've given them, because you have no way of knowing the seed that you've planted in their life. And you may never know. I mean, I got into Unity because somebody gave me a book. I didn't understand the book, but it caused me to look at my life and what was I believing in? Because I'd been told a lot of different things, but in my heart of hearts, it never really fully landed. Spiritual understanding is for you only. You cannot give somebody else spiritual understanding. They can only see within you the changes based on the changing in your thinking, and that changes your behavior, and that changes your results. You see, because the more you espouse to these principles of truth, the more you live them. They're no longer just words, they're actions. You see, so we can never give another person spiritual understanding. We can only show them the path, and then they have to choose which direction on that path they want to go. I'm always reminded of this scene in the movie with Tom Hanks and Stowaway. No, not Stowaway. The delivery man on what we would call a FedEx truck, and it lands in the ocean. Well, the movie ends with him at a crossroads in his life. He has survived living alone for all of these years, and he's at a crossroads in the middle of Nebraska with cornfields or wheat fields all around him, and he can go in any direction. Spiritual understanding is like that. You can choose a myriad of paths with which to have an understanding of who you are as a spiritual being. Unity is just one of those paths. That's why we say, or we refrain from saying, that unity is the only way. It isn't. Unity is one of the ways, and it has been a profound experience for me, and I hope for you too. But there are other ways to get spiritual understanding, but you can't give it to anybody. You can only invite them in to have an experience. I want to share with you in the chapter Spiritual Understanding, paragraph 22. When you first consciously desire spiritual understanding, you do not attain it at once. How many of us want it to happen right now? I get it. God is good, so give me the goods, we say. You have been living in the external of your being, your personality, and have believed yourself cut off from God. Many of us are still living in that consciousness. And it may just be a fleeting moment where there's this realization that, oh, God's not listening. There's no point, right? We start to doubt. We start to put our own doubts in our consciousness. So spiritual understanding doesn't come all at once. You've been living in the external of your being and have believed yourself cut off from God. Your first step after coming to yourself is to arise and go to my Father, God, Spirit, to turn your thoughts away from the external, seeming toward the central and real, your individuality, to know intellectually that you are not cut off from God, and that God therefore desires to manifest himself within you as the present deliverance. See, because once we get this realization and we start to live our life with clarity, spiritual understanding, we find ourselves easily going to God for the guidance and wisdom and love that we desire. In our quest to understand God and to understand ourselves more, spiritual understanding is that step that we take. And when we get clarity on a point of understanding, we take the next step and we get further clarity, and we take the next step and we get further clarity, until we come to our own realization that God and I are one. no separation. God and I are one. And it is at that point that we can fully say, I am made in the image and likeness of God, and mean it and understand it. You see, you tell that to another human being, they'll look at you a little funky because they know your stuff. They see you when you're not okay. They see you when you're sick. Well, if you're so gaudy, how come you're getting sick? You're so gaudy, how come you say these negative things about so and so and so and so? Because we're going through a spiritual journey. It's an unfolding. It's a process of letting go of those thoughts that no longer serve us, the below and above the line behaviors. You see? So it's a practice. It's continuously doing the right thing and enhancing your spiritual understanding. Because we all know, we all want to do the right thing, but we get tangled up in our personality. We get defiant, we get, self-righteous, or whatever it is that brings us to this state of mind. And when it happens, we get still. We take a breath and we remember who we really are, and what we are really here to do and to accomplish. You see, because besides spiritual understanding, there's also intellectual understanding. Spiritual understanding is you get it. Intellectual understanding is reading a book and discovering, oh, that's what I should do. I should meditate and pray more. And that thought just goes out in the ethers and no action is ever taken. You see, because intellectual knowledge comes to you from outside yourself. It's information. But spiritual understanding is that which arises from within. And if you check out Matthew 16, who do men say that I am? Who do men say that the Son of Man is? Intellectually, it's just a man. It's just a guy that's wanting power and control. The spiritual side of us, Peter, says, you are the Son of God. Matthew 16. You see, because we are made in the image and likeness of God, but we protest that. We find that not to be our truth so many times that we start to continue to believe the falsehood of that statement. And our personality takes on a form of its own. But when we fully get it, our individuality becomes stronger and we are lifted up from the man-made mistakes in our lives and the man-made mistakes that the universe is sitting in, because you can't change them. Now we know that intellectually, and we can't force anybody on a spiritual path. As much as we want our partners, our friends to grasp this knowledge, it's easier said than done, isn't it? We must first demonstrate it. It's like the movie, I want what she has. You have to do the work. You have to do and lay the foundation to be receptive to all that means for us. And that's an awareness factor. And I talked about it last week. We must be consciously aware of what we're doing and saying. When we are pushing ourselves on another human being with a thought or a principle or a belief, it's never going to land. When you want to be right more than anything else, it causes disharmony in our lives. It causes us all sets of unnecessary suffering. We must be true to ourselves, do what brings us the greatest spiritual awareness. Many people will come into unity, discover a few truths, and they leave. I've seen that over and over again. They came with a specific need, and when that need was met, they left. They moved on to different experiences of God. And we feel sad that they've left because we want them to be on the same journey we're on. And that's not possible. So when we keep our hearts open to all who come into our lives, and we be the best self we can be, our best individuality self, that spiritual understanding comes more and more peace lands in our life instead of the disharmony that can cause from the unrest within our soul when we want others to change. And I end this lesson with the second to the last paragraph in spiritual understanding. It's paragraph number 36, midway through. I have yet many things to say to you, but you cannot bear them now. We grow up using for others the light and knowledge we have. We expand as we go on step by step in spiritual insight until in the fullness of time, which means when we have grown spiritually up to the place where God sees that we are able to bear the many things, we receive the desires of our hearts. You see, we cannot leap into our spiritual understanding. It's a process. We have to have clarity, and then we manage it and we put it into our everyday existence, and then another clarity, another understanding, not intellectual understanding, but our soul gets it. Our soul and our spirit move, and our consciousness changes, and our subconscious changes with it. We spend more time in our super consciousness where all the truth of who we really are is sitting there waiting for us to tap, but we can't tap it until we become aware that a tap is needed. So to recap, spiritual understanding is not intellectual understanding, the reading of many materials, but it's how you live your life. You see, we cannot live in a bubble. People are people. We have to interact with other people for the growth to be experienced. We can't hibernate and sit and meditate and take all these classes without demonstrating a spiritual understanding with the principles that are presented. It can't all be up here. It has to be lived through. And the more we live through it, the more is expected us to continue this process of living who we really are. So our personality must diminish and our intellect must increase through spiritual understanding. God bless you. Have a solid week in your spirit groups. I love you, and I'll see you next week.